Hey, Kyle, any objection to discussing some role play, my guy?
Oh, hell no.
Hello, and welcome to the Hidden Role Play Podcast, where we discuss hidden role games and deduction games. Typically, this week, we're taking a break. Kyle and I, as we've mentioned in the past, partake in, and sometimes Raptor Zone, our friend Alex, partake in hidden role play games, aka Mafia games, on the HeyTrainer website. And last time, it was a game of mine we discussed. This time, we're going to discuss a game of yours, my guy.
Oh, hell yeah.
Let's go. All right. So with me, as usual, is Kyle. Alex is behind the scenes, maybe playing Animal Crossing or
Doing a Deoxys raid.
over there. Oh, is that what he's doing? A Deoxys raid right now? Oh, he's sorting Pokemon cards. So he's very busy, making sure the audio levels are good. So yeah, we're gonna dive right into it. This was a HeyTrainer Mafia. What was it? 22? Is that right?
I think it's 21.
Sounds right. Maybe mine was 22. Anyway, numbers were it's irrelevant. We're going to go over the cast of players real quick. We had myself, Poteet, Absol Trainer, Weiss on Ice, Superstar, Rax, who subbed in for Darth Pika, That Fake Snake, CRL882T, Johnny Bones, Maddie Stacks, Master Moocow, Jellyfisher, Alibrel, Awast1, JD Koopa, T Cards, and Tomahawk. Also, on the roster is borichuWu, but we'll get to that. So this was a very interesting game. I like this. First off, it was a skin of Ace Attorney. Why Ace Attorney, Kyle?
I think it fits pretty well. Like, obviously, it's one of my interests. I've played all the games. I've even played the Japanese games, so I'm pretty dedicated. Wish they come out with a Switch one, but they won't.
They won't? Why do you say that?
It's not profitable enough for Capcom, so they've given up on it for now.
Okay.
But it's a game about being deceived and trying to uncover the truth, and what could be more fitting for a Mafia game than trying to uncover the deceivers?
That's a very astute point you make there. You had almost every main cast character in here, which I'm sure we'll get to maybe at player grades or something. Was there anyone that was hard to cut? Any characters that did not make the game, that you wish would have?
I didn't put in Pearl because it didn't make sense for the story I was going to tell, with it could being potentially violent for like a child to be involved. I didn't want to like make a gruesome fan fiction. And
okay.
I thought the judge was too boring. I thought about making like a judge indie role, but the judge doesn't really have a personality even, except for being like absent-minded. So I just threw him out.
An aloof guy. Yeah.
The character, so obviously no one was Larry Butts technically. He didn't really fit into the classes, so he was an easy cut. The one character I did axe, because it was originally an 18 roster game, was Winston Payne, or one of his relatives. Yeah, that prosecutor. And that was gonna change someone else's role, and then he was going to be one of the prosecutors. So
I would argue that Winston Payne is a lot more widely known in these games than a couple of the other characters you picked. So yeah, good on you. I'm going to guess that there were just so many prosecutors that
the prosecutors were the most. Yeah. It was the highest number of any one category, so it was easy. I had to cut one from there, and I don't really have a fond attachment to him as much as I did the other characters.
Okay. You said something about the story you wanted to tell, which segues me into another one of my questions. Was this the story going from day one that you knew you were going to tell, or was it meant to be more malleable with the goings on in the game?
The story was always going to be kind of the same no matter what happened. I had this idea while I was playing one of the sequel games. Detective Gumshoe is always getting screwed. No one ever... He never gets the credit he deserves. Like, he's getting the evidence for the prosecutor, but they're always threatening to cut his funds or to find a better prosecutor.
Defund Gumshoe.
Yeah, exactly. His girlfriend is always getting in trouble, and the prosecutors are the ones prosecuting her, so he's got to have some kind of resentment, but he's such a dork. He like never seems to hold it against them. But I wanted to make a story about what if he got grizzled and resentful against all of these colleagues of his. And that was going to be like the one, like obviously not true part of the story. The rest of the villains were going to be like actual villains from the story. And then the main character of my story was always going to be Miles Edgeworth. No one ever picked up on this, but Phoenix was like not talked about very much in most of the updates. He kind of featured equally to Edgeworth in the first update. And then there's another update where I think it was the second one, where he comes in at the very end and says something like a quip. But after that, I didn't mention him very much at all. He was just kind of there. And I instead made it a story about Von Karma and Edgeworth. And I tried to convey that by making it a Von Karma story, and who would have more to engage with than Edgeworth would.
Honestly, I hadn't even noticed that you featured Edgeworth that much. So
no one did.
Yeah,
I think it's just a natural and unavoidable consequence of the team alignment that if anyone's going to read the narratives, it's going to be the Mafia players. And if anyone's going to be to feel like they're like I'm giving too much away, it's going to be the members of the Mafia, because the town's just kind of like, I don't know what to take away from this. I've too many things that I'm thinking about, and I'm just going to get to what happened. I'm too excited. And another part of that is that the Mafia knows what's going to happen, so they're not as excited for the reveal. They're as excited for like what other details are there that I can bring up in my day talk, whereas the town is just like deadly focused on who is not in the game anymore.
So would you have said, full disclosure for this, I was Mafia in this game, and I said a couple times during the game that I felt that there were no clues in the updates. And honestly, at the time, I thought I was telling the truth. Was I lying?
I think this is best illustrated by a conversation I had through private messages with Pathicus. Okay. In the update where Superstar got eliminated, who was playing Maya, Maya channels Larry Butts, right? And he's like speaking through her, and he's like talking about, oh, I'm in a girl's body, what? And Edgeworth slams his hands on the table and he says, stop fooling around, tell us what happened to you. And then Phoenix says, yeah, tell us who killed you. And then, like, word for word, the next line is like, funny you should ask, Phoenix. Why did you... ... And then the lights go out, and then Maya gets eliminated. And Pathicus was like, did you just give away that Poteet is Mafia? Is anyone going to notice that? And I was like, one, there's a ... So he could easily say, like, the name got bleeped out. But yeah, that... And the person impersonating Phoenix Wright, the character you had, was the one who committed the murder. And so I had it in the story that the person comes back from the grave, to accuse their murderer. I had the story the whole time.
So clues were there.
They were there. And a plot point I didn't get to tell that I would have been really excited for was when you finally got eliminated from the game, whether or not AWAS was still in the game, there was going to be this big reveal that Phoenix Wright had been the Steel Samurai all along, and he was trapped inside of the suit because he got knocked out by your character, and he was concussed for the beginning of the trial, and so he was that's why he was complacent, but he was making more and more agitated, I need to get out of here, I need to stop what's happening.
Okay, I'm kind of sad we didn't get to see that. It almost everything you've said now completely eliminates my next question of whether or not you were going to try to tie it into an actual Ace Attorney game, but it sounds like you wanted to go full-fledged fanfic type narrative here.
Yeah, I did like that.
Is that correct?
Kind of. I did a more true to the story narrative when I did the Alola game, and that was like in retrospect a little too obvious. So I wanted it to be a completely new story using all characters everyone could find information on.
Right. All right. That's a little bit about Ace Attorney and the inspirations that you drew from for this game. So we're gonna get a little bit into the mechanics of it. I'm gonna let the mod here, a little dealer's choice. Do you want to discuss the classes or the abilities first?
I think it'd be best to discuss the abilities first.
All right. So you had a mechanic.
Honestly, we could do a whole podcast about this because I had been thinking about it for probably a year of how to make this game work.
Okay, well, I'm very ready for this. You had roles in the game. Well, I'm going to start with the first 4 that were on the silent nominations on the first first day. And what those roles were, we have a seer. Well, I'll go ahead and for those that don't know,
actually,
essentially...
I'm going to take over for just a second. Do you mind if before we talk about the roles individually, I just want to say a little bit about why I made the roles that I did, like why.
Sure,
why
I had that farther down, but
okay.
If you want to get to that now, let's go ahead.
So my first game was the Alola game, and it had this role that I was really excited about. It was my favorite role, which was the Oricorio role, which was the troublemaker. Like roles got switched under certain circumstances, but it was kind of busted. It was like the most overpowered role in the game. So it could only work under really like specific conditions that only one player out of 5 could control. And I wanted to like find another way to like make this a bigger part of the game. And as you know, the foremost concern when I make a game is I want everyone to feel like they can do something important, like they can all play a role in how the game ends up. So in the Alola game, the idea was everyone has a power role. Maybe not a power role, but they have a way they can influence the game because everyone had a roles and there was no vanillas. And then the second game, my role was make everyone Mafia because everyone likes to play as Mafia. No one likes to play as Vanilla Town. Mm-hmm. And then this game, my idea was everyone likes to be the seer, everyone likes to be the protector, everyone likes to be investigator or detective, which was I don't know how often we've had a detective, but I think people liked having the role. I wanted anyone to potentially be able to be that role. So even if you were like vanilla for the first half of the game, if you're still around at the end of the game, you might be getting multiple power roles because just by virtue of still being alive. So that was my idea with the shifting roles moving around. It was a way to increase hopefully player engagement, but ironically this is one of the shortest games, so like that cut down on like the number of pages in the game. But also I think we just didn't make, I think because of the publicness of the character names, that kind of also stifled conversation. So while I think engagement was probably up for one reason, it went down for a different reason.
Right. Yeah. Do you think maybe the classes had some of that to do too, in terms of where things bounced around from?
I have feelings about the classes that I should probably save.
You want to get to those later?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the roles that he's specifically referring to, we had just a normal seer, target a player, find their alignment. Protector, target and protect either yourself or another player from the night kill. An investigator, which is targeting another player, and you get to see who they target. And a detective, which is, you said you can't remember this ever, or the last time this was in a game. I don't remember this ever being in a game. But detective, targeting a player, and if they're night killed, you see which players targeted them. And you started the game. Nobody had any abilities at the start of the game, correct?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, nobody town.
Yeah, sorry. No town members. And you start with a silent nomination. Why'd you start with the silent nomination?
I thought there were new, because I took away the character claims, because I took away the ability claims, because I took away, in some ways, the role text claims. I wanted there to be other ways, means of deduction. So, or at least ways to prove that you were good at social deduction. So that would be, who are you going to give these roles to? Who do you think is the most town? Put your money where your mouth is by putting the role in their hands.
Yeah. And that worked. And there were a couple moving behind the scenes pieces that we didn't know. Well, that the town didn't know. They didn't know that the Mafia votes didn't count. And correct me if I'm wrong, it was the Protector couldn't go to Mafia Night 1.
Right.
And then the Seer, was it the Seer that needed 2 extra votes to go to them?
Correct.
All right.
You need to receive 2 more votes than the next person to get it.
Correct. And so those were distributed at the beginning of night 1 based on the most votes. And a single player could hold as many as they wanted. And going into the next day, then they got to essentially nominate their own person to pass it on to going into the next night. And the only ways to remove these, correct me if I'm wrong, outside of a mod kill or outside of not passing it, would have been if they were night killed, correct?
Yep, only night kills and voluntarily letting the ability be gone from the game, which was way more confusing for people than it needed to be, and I don't know what I could have done to make it more obvious.
Right. So those roles, were they used as you expected them to be?
No.
Why?
I was talking
maybe
to
not why. Go ahead.
Well, I think the one that was used the worst was the Protector. I was talking to...
Tell me more.
Yeah, I was talking to Alex about this prior to starting the podcast. I think the only time in recent memory that someone has successfully protected anybody in HeyTrainer Mafia was in the last game, in your game, when I, as Mafia, tried to remove Cran from the game, and it was too obvious, and he got protected. But prior to that, I think it had been 5 years, maybe, since the last time it had happened. And the last time I can remember it happening prior to that instance was when a teammate protected Russian Charizard, but he knew Russian Charizard was on his team because he was the team lead, and it was like a multi-faction game. So like that doesn't even count in my mind. So
right.
Protectors have, by and large, been a failure, despite being a quote-unquote power role. And so it'll make more sense, I guess, why they were buffed when we get to the classes, but the Protector was already better in this game than it ever had been before. Even if you weren't a public defender, the fact that, let's say the person we thought was most town, let's say it was Rax, and that's because I think at one point in the game, Rax was the most cleared by virtue of Superstar clearing them. The town could have cleared or protected Rax every single day of the game if they wanted to. There was for the first time, there was no rule on you couldn't target a player multiple times because the role would be in a different person's hands every day. So that was a buff to the Protector that town had never had before, and that's even before we get to the classes. In addition, because of that rule, in the late game, I say in the late game because this is not how it was used.
What late game?
Or a late game didn't even happen, yeah. In the late game, the Protector role could never be removed from the game because you just give it to the person who was the most town, and they could self-protect. And as long as no one publicized who was the Protector, then the 2 most town people, one of them would be protected at night, and the Protector role would stay in the game, even if the other person was removed from the game. So
Right.
I felt like the protector role was much better in this game than it ever had been, and it couldn't have been used worse because it was given to people that weren't considered town by probably at least a third of the group at any given time, and they chose to use it on themselves even when they knew of better candidates. So that one was very misused.
Mm-hmm.
The seer, I mean, it did its job one night, and it would have another night if it hadn't been role blocked. Investigator.
What a roadblock that was. Huh.
Yeah, right. Because that was not where I was going for most of that night. But the detective and the investigator didn't really pan out very well. Someone did investigate a Mafia player, but it was covered up with their confidant ability. But the thing that I think I was most disappointed about, and that it was not discussed at all on day one, was how to silent nominate. Not the way it was discussed, which was, should we tell everyone? Should we narrow down the list of who we're going to silent nominate? Just so we all kind of get a consensus on some best choices? Yeah, let's definitely make it like 1 out of 3 players is going to get the seer, so that Mafia only have a 33% chance of removing it night 1. That's smart.
What kind of discussion did you want to see instead?
I was hoping, so I guess I really thought people would overachieve because I thought they would talk about it day 1, but I don't think it ever got discussed. In fact, the antithesis was discussed a lot, and that is, I wanted people to talk about nominating people who weren't that class for the role. I thought that the best thing to do day 1 was to nominate someone a seer who wouldn't use their class, someone to be a protector who wouldn't be able to use that class. Because
why?
It would be least obvious to Mafia where the roles were. That seemed to me like the best way to protect them was to give it to someone who could not use it optimally that night. It seemed very risky to me that they tried to give a public defender the protector because they would have obviously wanted to protect someone who wasn't themselves, and the Mafia would have been like, well, Potique didn't get it, let's just shoot at a public defender. Or they could have just shot at Superstar, thinking like, well, Tomahawk didn't get it, Superstar might be the seer, let's take a shot at him and maybe he won't get protected. And he wasn't. So I really thought they telegraphed a lot of things that they didn't. Right. They should have considered not telegraphing with their silent nominations. And the part about that is that I haven't said yet, because we haven't talked about classes, is that the roles were already good without the class buffs. They're all power roles. They don't need to be super duper power roles for them to be effective. So while you obviously would want to maximize your benefit if you could, you also don't want to telegraph where things are going. And so I know the seer was a role that I actually pulled back a little, because if you seared someone, they couldn't be protected the next night. But it's a game of eliminating people. Even if you out that person, that's one fewer person that isn't going to get eliminated. And on top of that, this person who brings that information forward would usually get punished because they would be outing the seer. But you can't out the seer in this game because the seer will pass. So you get the benefit of clearing someone in the day and the benefit of saying that you cleared them, which could also clear you. It was a lot that wasn't able to be processed, I guess.
Right. All of what you just said aside.
Yeah.
About is it a fair assessment to say you felt that these 4 main roles were bungled and mismanaged?
At times they were used fine. I don't think
as a whole
that the talk about them was good.
Okay.
I think the usage of them maybe outside the protector was like okay.
Okay.
Like T-Cards used his correctly, theoretically, and Superstar used his correctly, theoretically. I actually liked his target of that one. And the investigator got like Robloxed one night, and Seer got Robloxed one night. So the Roblox were good. I mean, you can't hold that against them. But I don't know. I'd say it was like average at best.
Okay.
No,
so
but not necessarily bad overall.
Right. Okay. With that into consideration, just the idea or now that we've seen it, of the 4 bouncing abilities, do you think it was a success? If you remove results.
I think in practice it worked really well.
Okay.
We might be saying something different if like someone got nominated Seer Protector on night 1 and that person got night killed. Like then maybe we'd be like, it was a total failure because 2 power rolls were lost in the same night. But I mean, think about how remarkable it was that none of the rolls got removed at all. They changed hands so often.
I know.
And yet, not only did they not get removed, Mafia only got 1 ability over the course of the game until the last time. They only got that ability once.
Right.
Which,
yeah,
for how bad the reads lists were this game, it's incredible that people still continue to give the abilities to town members.
Deep down, they know.
Deep down, they had someone they trusted with a power roll, but they still didn't trust them during day talk.
I know. No, what are you gonna do? Well, that's later in the discussion. Adding on to those 4 roles, you had a confidant, which was a universal ability that almost every player had. Not everyone, correct? Like CRL, she could only send. She couldn't receive, right? Which way was it?
I think there was a Mafia member who couldn't send.
And then one that couldn't receive?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Okay. Well, regardless, just pretend it was everybody. And that was, they could send a night phase, they could send a message of 50 characters or less to their confidant, and you would relay that on for them. How did you get to 50 characters? Because at the start of signups, I believe it was 25. Why'd you change it?
Oh, it was number 25.
20? It wasn't 50 at the start of the game. Or at the start
characters, sorry.
Signups. Yes.
When you said characters, I thought you meant roster. Sorry.
No.
Yeah, I increased the amount of, because I just didn't in practice know how big 25 characters was. I thought it was longer than it was.
Very big.
Yeah, no. I feel like, tweets used to be 40 characters, right? So that's what I was basing it off. I was like, tweets are long.
140.
Well, they're 140 now, but they used to be 40.
No, they're 280 now.
Oh, maybe that also colored how I thought they were. But I was like, I want it to be shorter than a tweet, so I'll pick 25. And then I like actually typed it out like during the first day, and I was like, oh, this is nothing. I gave them nothing. So yeah, that was just like something I didn't actually work out. I worked out so much. I worked out how early the game could end. I worked out how to prevent the abilities from getting past the other characters. Blah blah blah. But I did not work out how long the messages needed to be. But I did it before one got sent.
When I'm designing a game. Yeah, no, that's fine. I wasn't like saying like, hey, you changed it on us after the fact.
Yeah.
I was just curious. But why did we have this ability? What did you want it used for? What was its purpose?
It was more, so it wasn't like a really purposeful thing. Like, this is the piece that makes it all work. No, I don't like neighbors as an ability. I think it's really boring, and this conversation's always the same. Oh, I made these 2 people neighbors at night chat. I'm going to spy on. So like a lot of the recent ones have been like, oh, it's not just neighbors. Now you can see what they're saying too, because it used to be just like they can send messages.
Guilty.
You don't know. Yeah. So now it's like, oh, they send messages and I get to know what they're saying, but then you spy on them and it just looks like, I don't trust you. I don't trust you. Well, give me your reads list. Okay. It's so boring for me anyway.
It's day talk at night.
Right. It's day talk at night, and everyone's like suspicious, and nothing really ever gets achieved. So I wasn't going to do that. Also, making quick topics and managing them is just tedious. So I don't want to do that.
Pain in the butt.
Yeah. No, thanks. So instead, I didn't want to like make a role where it was like, you're the sender messenger today, and I'm going to send it to someone else. That would be lame too. So I was like, everyone gets a role, and they get to, again, it was a test of showing an opportunity to show that you have good social deduction skills. Do you think that the person that is your confidant is worthy and trustworthy of a message? And what would you like to send to them? And so that was one way. My purpose for it was proving whether or not you trusted this person. Maybe to your other people playing the game, but also kind of a post-game brag, like I knew this person was trustworthy from the beginning. You could use it as
right.
But the other reason, the more obvious reason, would be that you might not want to. Town might agree that the seer shouldn't out themselves and give their information away because the person they seared would be able to be night killed. And so if the town felt this way, which they did, I obviously have kind of counter argued that already. But let's say that, or you used another ability and you agreed that you didn't want to give it out during the day, you could at least tell someone in your night message what you were doing so that later it could be verified. So you could say, I'm investigating so-and-so. So if that person got night killed, like with the role, then at least you would know, like, we actually know what action they committed, who they were suspicious of, so we can take that information into account. So you can essentially pass on anyone who had a power role, because anyone could pass on their game action immediately,
right?
Even without the results.
Right. So same question from the first four. Did you feel like this was a success?
I think it was a good idea. I personally think it was a good idea, but no, people didn't really do anything with it.
Well, shoot. I thought it was a good idea too. The sixth role was the vigilante role, the typical, you pick someone, you shoot them, whatever. This one didn't even get to get used, so I'm not even going to ask you if it was a success. It was a standard role.
I did not see that happening, because the only way it couldn't happen is if the Mafia had the Protector and the Vigilante, which they did. And I even put in, like, as you said earlier, precautions that could prevent this from happening. Like, you needed to get 2 more votes to get Vigilante. The town had to get Protector on the start of the game. So even if Protector, I don't know. It was a really unfortunate turn of events. And we'll get to this later, but like, there are so many reasons why, of all people, HeyTrainer should not have been the one capable of getting both of these at the same time. Like, not that he played badly, he didn't, but he had the most evidence, the most, he had the most strikes against him, the most clues that he might not be town, even though he ended up having the one big piece of evidence that was in his favor that he was town. So, yeah.
No, yeah. What are you gonna do?
But I will say about it that the timing of it was very important. Like I said, I mapped out when the game could end, and I did this to give it on this day because no matter which team was losing, I thought it would benefit this team to give it on day 4. The town was losing day 4. They needed a way to jump back into the game. So this kill would prevent them from losing during the night phase if they got the Protect wrong, as long as they hit a Mafia member. However, if Mafia was losing the game, like let's say they only had 2 people left in the game, then the odds that they would get hit would be very low. And because the Vigilante had been given out, the incentive to use it would be high. Then it would basically, ideally, the Mafia would get a night kill and they would get the Vigilante misfiring. So this would be a way for them to catch back up in the game.
Yeah, it just didn't work out like that.
No.
Before we move on to classes, Do you have any other final thoughts you want to touch on roles at all? Or do you feel like you got most of your piece out for now?
I think I got most of it out. The only things we haven't talked about really were like the capability for someone to have multiple of the roles. Like you could be seer and protector, and not only is that good because you get to protect both roles so you can use the seer on someone and protect yourself, and you guarantee both roles will make it into the next day. You guarantee the seer can convey what happened. Not only that, but if let's say Gumshoe's role had been out of the game by that time, the ability to perjury.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to check my notes really quick.
I want to actually theory craft something with you after you check your notes. If Town would have put Seer and Protector on the same person, and they protected themselves and seared someone else, and then came out the next day with their Seer result, and that they were going to pass it to someone random, what was stopping Town from doing that?
What was stopping them from doing that was like trusting the person that they gave it to.
Exactly. But outside of that, was anything stuck? Because theoretically, if they pass both those rules and they don't have to announce where the seer is, so the protector can be role blocked, if they're passing it to a mystery figure and the role block misses.
Well, the other thing is that if it's not a if the person possessing both of those roles isn't a public defender, then they could get both roles role blocked and night killed in the same time. So Mafia role blocks them, prevents both roles, and then they night kill them.
Okay.
Because the role block has priority over the protector.
Okay. I still think there's something there some kind of roadmap they could have followed.
Well, that's the other. So I was talking about. So with the ability perjury for Gumshoe, that player will be perceived to have targeted another player. With that roll out, then you could have put the protector onto the detective. Now the detective can't fail, and you can protect the detective role all game long. Or if the role blocker gets out of the game, then you put the seer on the protector, and now they cannot be stopped no matter what you do. So there are these like checkmate scenarios that the town could have come up with, so long as they could catch a Mafia member, but they couldn't.
Yeah, slight problem there. It was so close. It was so close to the town needed one kill, and then it would just been the key in the door, and they could have just flung it open.
Yeah, the hardest was getting the first one, and unfortunately they couldn't do that.
Oh, sorry, guys. But as you said, the classes were a big part of this in the role usage. So let's talk about the classes. I'm actually going to go through these one by one with you. First one you had was Prosecutor. And it's important to note that these player classes were given to characters, or the roles, to characters that are typically this style of class in the video games. So we have Prosecutor, and it's if during the previous night phase you were the seer, your vote will count double. Why?
So this one, I've always liked the double vote ability, but it's a complicated role because it's one that you usually can't hide, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to use it. And the cool thing about the prosecutors was there was no Mafia prosecutors. At some point, I wanted the town to wonder, and they did numerous times, like, what can Mafia do with these abilities? We have not guilty abilities and ability rules. And some players interpreted this as the ability rules were separate from the not guilty index, but they were tied together. So an assumption could be made that it wasn't, was that that there were guilty player ability rules. So how did guilty players interact with abilities? Well, they couldn't use them. And I was about to say something, but I'm going to save it.
Okay.
But the prosecutor was the only one that could prove it. Like there was no way not to prove it, right? You couldn't choose not to prove it. You would get the double vote. You couldn't say, I don't want the double vote.
Right.
So all prosecutors could demonstrate that they had the ability, and they couldn't like feign ignorance about it. So it kind of worked in a way where, like, if you thought someone was Mafia and they had demonstrated they could use the prosecutor class, then you would assume that the Mafia could use the abilities, or the classes at least, right? But if the group hypothesis was that they couldn't use those abilities, then the prosecutor would be a way to prove if they were town automatically, because if someone could use the prosecutor role, then they were town.
You wanted it to be a pseudo soft clear.
Yeah, like, well, it was a soft clear that late in the game, if you were making a deduction about, well, so and so, let's say HeyTrainer had died like mid game, like day 3 or something.
Okay, sure.
And HeyTrainer is the best example of this because he had the investigator role and he didn't vote block someone. He just said, like, oh, I didn't think I needed to vote block him or whatever. I don't remember. But after his death, people could have been like, maybe he didn't vote block him because he couldn't. Because why would a Mafia member choose not to vote block somebody? And then this could have led to the logic that let's give the seer to a prosecutor and make them demonstrate it. Or, like, you wouldn't maybe as town say to do that, but someone who had the seer role could say, I wanted to give it to a prosecutor to see if they would demonstrate it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I like that. It also, in our meta, it feels like there's a decent amount of people that like to take temporary breaks and play a little bit of hero ball. And it feels like with the passing on of the abilities, if they can come to that deduction point of, hey, I'm going to pass this on because I'm going to try to get a little information, aka can they double vote the next day phase, you're still giving a group result, but you're putting a little bit of the hero ball into that player's pocket. Just kind of like, hey, you can do it. Go.
There were 2 more reasons, actually. One was that...
Wow. Okay.
So there were 2 seer classes, right? There was mediums and prosecutors.
Right.
This was like another subtle hint that you don't need to give the seer to a medium night 1 because other people can use the seer role and get a added effect out of it. And then I lost my other one, but maybe it'll come back to me.
Okay, it's fine. We can, if it does come back to you, feel free.
Yeah.
But we'll just jump right into it because, as you said, you didn't have to pass it to a medium or give it to the medium the first night. What did the medium do? The medium was, when you are a seer, you cannot be deceived and your results cannot be tampered with.
Oh, it has to do with mediums. And that is...
Perfect. Talk about it.
So there are not only the most prosecutors, but that means that there are even more people who get bonuses from the seer role. That means that there must be Mafia probably in this group because they take up so much of the game. So this was like another way of me trying to communicate, don't just write off the mediums as town, because as other players can use the seer role to a bonus effect. Just because the medium role is clearly the best role doesn't mean that mediums are on your side.
I definitely think, Tomahawk benefited for the first 3 days strictly because of him being a medium.
No question. There's no way to downplay the effect it had on how he could play the game.
Right. But when we look at the roles, really, outside of my role where I was masked, did the medium do anything else besides see through me?
No, the only... Okay. So, okay. We should just talk about this now. You want
to talk about the errata?
Yeah. So, originally this was an 18-player game, like I said, and there was going to be an independent role. And there was going to be a Mafia prosecutor, and the mediums were going to both be town. So that was the original alignment that I had of the game most of the time I was developing it. And so with the Mafia member of the prosecutor, the head Mafia member had another role that could make someone look anti-town. So because there were two ways for town to see through it, there were two ways for Mafia to disrupt it. And the independent role was, just for funsies, it was going to be a survivor role, but you had to acquire 3 of the 4 original Power Town roles at some point in the game. So
okay,
I feel like one or the other would have been too boring to try to achieve. So I wanted there to be a little more complicated. But yeah, that was the indie role that I ended up cutting, because in general I think indie roles are kind of they're overplayed.
Right.
So I had that. Obviously, there was another, because of this, because Rafa was originally town, there was another role on the mafioso that said that they could make people look anti-town. And when I was changing the game around and I decided to cut the independent and then make one of the mediums town, it was just an oversight that I did not remove the other anti-town masking role from the game.
Right.
And by the time HeyTrainer went to use it, I was like, I left it in the game. I just let it happen. But then, and luckily it did nothing. But then that night I was like, but what if it had happened? I just had this game's gonna get ruined if this gets pulled off. So I had to remove it from the game. Clearly, you could say Mafia might still be overpowered without that role, but there were multiple checkmate scenarios the Mafia had, and you were already trying to play to one that just weren't good for the game. They weren't good for the town's chances. You can't there were already a lot of assumptions that I was not assumptions necessarily, but a lot of questions I wanted town to work through, a lot of internal role puzzles for them to figure out, and they needed to have some level of comfort when they finally removed your role, the one that Sears's town, from the game, that wouldn't happen again. So I had to errata it to give town a chance to win, basically. But
right,
I think after it was removed from the game, that the game was again balanced as intended.
So here's my take after you've explained the errata, and you said at one point that the medium was the clearly superior role, which I think in a game of unknowns is probably correct. The prosecutor role is better than the medium in this game. Do you disagree?
Why do you say that?
Because the prosecutor role soft clears. I'd have to go back and check the notes, but I believe there are 5 prosecutors?
Yeah, there are 5.
Okay.
It soft clears, but only if you have already played the game long enough to make the deduction that Mafia can't use the roles. So you have to have some piece of evidence that says that.
But if they have it earlier and showed that they could do it earlier, that still accounts for something later that they can go back to. And the medium only is seen through me, and it's already confusing the town that there might be chaos out there or whatever. I don't know. I think the prosecutor might have been sneaky better.
I disagree.
Okay.
That's why the only hard rule about the ability passing was that Mafia could not get Protector Knight 1, was because then they just have a free shot at Superstar, right? They just take Maya out of the game, right, and there's no way that Seer can catch the fake Phoenix, right? So
dun, dun, dun.
I think the Seer role. So the thing about classes that made me most frustrated with people saying I'm thinking specifically of a Matty Stacks post where he says, "It's weird that you nominated Sleuth for Seer. Why would you do that? That seems counterintuitive." Because clearly I want people to think about that. I've already said that. But the Seer has always been a power role.
Yeah.
it didn't need to be better.
Yeah.
There's never been a seer that I can recall that could not fail, right? Can you think of a time?
Right. No.
That this is the best roll ever made of that could ever, for the town, right? There's been lots of like busted like multi-kill things for like Mafia, but this is the best town roll that could possibly exist. Maybe besides the troublemaker roll that I made before, if it didn't have the restrictions on it.
This is very good. Normally, if you give me a seer and it's find their alignment, I'm fine with that.
Right. Find their alignment.
You got to put in the text.
There's nothing that can stop it. Even this could not be roll blocked, right? It cannot be tampered with. Is the wording? So this is another clear advantage that the town had, right? And I just wanted someone to say, this roll is busted. Did we need 2 of them? Why would I give you something so good and then give you 2 of it? Now, obviously, like, I'm not saying I expected people to be like, obviously, based on the balance of the game, we don't need two mediums. That's busted. We automatically need to assume one is Mafia. No. But I at least wanted someone to raise the possibility, like, hey guys, that seer roll is better than ever before. Like, does that mean the medium isn't necessarily town? Because why would we get a buff to roll and then get 2 of them? It would be logical the later in the game that Tomahawk wasn't in the game for someone to start to question, wait, what the F?
Yeah, why is he still alive?
This roll is so busted. Why is he still here?
Yeah. That's a little bit on the prosecutor meeting. We're going to dip our toes into the public defender. When you are a protector, neither you nor your target, that's pretty good, may be roll blocked. In addition, when you are the protector, you can protect players from the night kill who have been the target of a seer during the previous phase. I'm going to ask, I've been asking why. I'm going to ask a different question this time. I mean, I guess the question starts with why, but why'd you throw in the clause here for players that have been seared to be protected? Why did you feel that was special enough to where you needed the class to match up with the role in this scenario?
So this is like specifically there so that town was clearly going to have the conversation like, we can't, even though we passed the seer roll, we can't tell who we seared, at least for one day, because that person can't be protected. Except they could if a public defender got the protector roll. And 3 people had this roll, or 4? I think 3, right? Athena, Apollo, and
myself.
The Steel Samurai. Well, you didn't have it. Steel Samurai. So,
right. Well, yeah. I was this class.
Yes. So, this was a way to that people could actually say, no, wait, we can, because Mafia won't know if a public defender has the protector role, at least most nights, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this was a counter to that conversation that I had anticipated.
I see. That makes sense. We already discussed the fact that the public defender was probably mismanaged, so we're not gonna go back to that. But not being roll blocked, that's pretty good too.
Yeah, this was so that, again, like, this is the seer the best in the prosecutor's hands? Is the seer the best in the medium's hands? Or is the seer the best in the public defender's hands because they can't be roll blocked and they could protect themselves? So you could make a really powerful public defender seer. So many possibilities for these like super rolls that just went to waste.
Never happened. Number 4 was law enforcement. When you are the investigator, you may opt to vote block your target for the duration of the upcoming day phase. And you had to state your intent in the PM, and that you may withdraw the vote block at any time. I kind of like this role a lot. This one feels, obviously, in a game where everybody has roles, as we discussed, like the medium seer combo it's busted, right? This one feels like the perfect little line of balance to me.
Uh-huh.
How do you feel? You feel the same?
Well, if you caught someone doing something dirty, then you had an extra way that you could punish that person during the day, right? So not only did you like make a hero play by catching someone, targeting someone when they shouldn't have had an ability, or God forbid they actually performed the night kill, right? Then you could also be like, not only did we stop them, but they don't get a vote today. So this is but the coolest thing about this role to me, and this is one I'm really proud of, is, I love Pokemon cards where you have like the up to clause, right? Like Night Maintenance, put up to 3 cards back in your deck, right? As opposed to Super Rod, where it's like you must put 3 cards back in your deck.
Yeah. Don't tell me what to do, Pokemon.
I'm telling the readers, okay? Or the listeners.
No, I know. I was saying, don't tell me what to do.
Okay.
Pokemon.
I see. But yeah, I wanted to give more options. Like it could play to your town cred if you were removed a vote block from somebody, right? Because you changed your mind, you came around on someone. It was a way to like add another layer of like how people would perceive you if you would remove this vote block or not.
Yeah,
and if you would do it in the first place, that's what pissed me off the most about people that's like not giving a shit that Absol Trainer didn't vote block. Yeah.
Why
There's no reason not to do it. That was like the perfect way to like catch a Mafia member, is if people had talked on day one like, well, we got to make sure if you're an investigator, you are always doing this.
Right.
There's no reason not to do it.
Not to. No reason.
So frustrating.
I think that's why I was drawn to this ability when I first saw it, because you were saying like you like the up to clause as opposed to forcing you to maximize your card. I like in card games, I like module cards where it's take action this or action Y.
Yeah, and this is so, like this is the opposite of what I said about the double vote, right? Because I feel like double vote is way more powerful to just like surprise at any time. Because if you can demonstrate you can single vote, people aren't going to expect you can double vote later. That's too powerful. So it's like a nuance. Like vote block is usually a weak rule that doesn't really impact the game, but it's a lot stronger when you combine it with the knowledge you might have from the investigator and the fact that you can remove it.
Right. I like that. Number 5, Sleuth. When you are the detective, you may opt to ability block your target during this night phase and upcoming day phase.
Yeah,
the target, if they attempt,
I was gonna jump on something, but I'll let you go.
Okay, your target, if they attempted to use abilities, will be informed that they were ability blocked. What were you gonna say?
The next day phase clause was something
very interesting.
Yeah, I was like, they have to. There's no town abilities you can use during the day, and no one like was curious about that. This was like the only way to prevent Professor Layton's revenge kill from going on. Right.
So this one, actually, I never even asked in the game because I didn't really want to bring attention to what I was wondering about it. But if like this had been used on if the detective on night 1 would have targeted, I don't know, the night kill, or not the night kill, someone else that didn't get night killed, they had the chance to ability block what they did on night 1, right? Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah.
That's good.
And I actually got a question about this the very first night. Master Mukau was like, doesn't it seem antithetical that I'm targeting this person because I think they're going to get night killed? Why would it, and I'm doing this because I think they're town. Why would I want to roadblock them?
That's a fair question. What did you say back?
I wasn't going to coach him, so I wasn't going to like justify like, hey, here's some great ways to use this ability.
All right. Well, the game's over. If you were coaching him, what would you have said?
So actually, it might help to say that later in the game, Master Mukau hypothesized that the detective role is stronger than the investigator role, and that it can surefire catch someone who is Mafia, whereas the investigator can catch someone doing something not as consequential, right? Because you could always mask what you were doing with the confidant,
right?
So you might not catch anything with the investigator. But the detective was actually nerfed by the mafioso role that you could pick someone, perjure them, and then they will appear to have targeted the person who got night killed. So that would turn the detective into a 50-50, at least until the mafioso was removed from the game. So this role actually wasn't quite as strong as he thought it was at that point in the game. So in order to make the role a little bit stronger, because even if it worked, it would only be a 50-50 at many points in the game, I wanted to have both that defensive possibility, or maybe not defensive, but like passive possibility and an active possibility. Let's say you just didn't have any clue who was going to be night killed. You had no sense for it. And who could have night won? About Weiss, right? So instead, right, if you had a really negative feeling about someone, you could instead use it for the offensive capability.
So is module, whatever the word is.
Yeah. I was basically giving you more options.
Yeah. But you're doing it in a way that obviously right away confused somebody. It was a nice subtle option. It wasn't a, hey, roll block or do this.
Yeah.
So.
And again, this was another hint that I was giving, or that I tried to give subtly in the classes, that you don't need to silent nominate people for their classes for that role.
Right.
Because even in this case, I'm not giving you straight buffs. I'm giving you something that you might pull off. Maybe the town might pull it off once in the game and they get that extra effect. But this wasn't meant to be like the detective must always go to a sleuth.
Right. Yeah. You weren't necessarily saying the most efficient way that you want to use these every night is, via the classes. It's the same question that we had with the roles. Were you pleased with the way classes played out? I kind of liked it. It was interesting.
I like how it all worked. Honestly, I'd like to just run the entire game as is again, with the different characters, like the same rotating roles and classes. And I'd be fascinated to see if the second time around, people having heard this conversation would be able to pull off some of the more, I guess, what I thought of as advanced strategies with what they could do.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think people would want to sign up for the same game twice. So.
Right. But now we're, 45, 50 minutes into this now, and I'm going to pull the ultimate sports talk show move. I've buried the lead, Kyle. This game, you had the roster signups with their character names next to them. There was no person, there was nobody that could have claimed they were someone else because we all knew who everybody was. Why did you do this to us?
Because the last 2 years.
Actually, no. I'm going to stop you right there. Let's go back to the PMs. You let us PM and choose effectively who we were going to be. Why did you let us do that?
That was for two reasons. One is that if you liked Ace Attorney, then I thought it would be more interesting if people got characters that they liked because they might be more enthusiastic about playing. Mm-hmm. The other reason, though, was because it lets people have the potential for conversations like, did you pick that character because you thought they would be Mafia? Or why would you want to be that character? That seems strange, right? So it added another conversation that was possible.
I see. Okay. Now that you've answered that, go ahead and tell me. We've had all these mass claims in game after game for the last 4 or 5 games. My game prior to this, it was name claims day one.
Uh-huh.
You took that rug from underneath us and you just yanked it, threw it across the hall, and you said, here's your damn names. Start the game. Were you happy with how it played out?
No, I wasn't.
No.
Oh,
okay.
I really like it in theory. And I honestly think it shouldn't be the last time we have a game like this. I don't necessarily think it should be every game or even most games.
Okay. So why didn't you like it here?
Well, because...
Or what was different from your theory, in your head? How did it play out differently from what you thought it would?
Well, the player base is just, over the last few games, been too conditioned into the only way I can figure out who's Mafia is the role text.
Mm-hmm.
Or the character claims, which characters don't fit.
Right.
And there are still things to socially deduce, even when that is part of the game. Or especially when that's part of the game. And there is increased chances for lying. Obviously, this took away some of the lying because people didn't have to come up with their own characters. But that didn't mean Mafia didn't have things to lie about. Like I already talked about, HeyTrainer had to say something when he couldn't demonstrate that he could vote block people, right? They still had to. They also didn't have the day talk filler of, we should all reveal our characters, we should all reveal our roles, blah blah. They also had to come up with new things to talk about to sound town, right? So in the absence of talking about your character, in the absence of talking about your abilities, then we could move on to the meaty stuff. Let's talk about these abilities that are on the table. Let's talk about something that never ever got mentioned. What do we think the distribution of Mafia players is? Do we think there are 2 Mafia in the prosecutors? Do we think it's 1 in 4 of the 5 categories? They did mention the flavor text, but no one seemed to care once they were all shared. What's the point of sharing them if you don't want to talk about it? I think people got too acclimated to, the only thing I know how to talk about is which roles fit. And that stems from a lot of the newer players are playing, a lot of older players aren't playing. And it's a smaller game, so they're a higher proportion of the game, and they didn't know how to play without trying to figure out who was lying about their character.
Right. This format that you gave us definitely favored a more nuanced approach to determining who was Mafia and whatnot. It wasn't gonna hit you on a shovel, or you weren't gonna get hit on the head by a shovel of a terrible name claim, or
No, but I still did choose characters to be Mafia for a specific reason, right? So it's always gonna be a question: is the main character Mafia? Never has been before, but this time it was, right?
I have notes to talk about this in day 1, but go ahead.
And other characters who might not fit in, Rafa and Nayuta, very unpopular characters from the most recent game. Maybe, and they're actual outsiders. So that was a reason I isolated one of them. Leighton isn't from Ace Attorney games. He's in a co-produced game, but he's also a character that no one else in the room knew besides Phoenix, who was Mafia, and Maya. And I explained that in the final part of the story. That's why Leighton's character stays away from her. But he's also doesn't look like the other characters, so it makes sense that someone could try to impersonate him, right?
Yeah.
And another thing that I wanted people to think about, when a Mafia flipped who wasn't Gumshoe, because Gumshoe was the only one who was truly himself. So if Phoenix flipped, if Rafa flipped, if Leighton flipped, they would show that they weren't that character, that they were that character in disguise, all 3 of them. Mm-hmm. And they were a major villain. They're all 3 major villains from the series. And I linked to the wiki, so that would have been a hint to go to the wiki and see what other major villains there are in the story, and who could they be posing as.
I see. Well, I really enjoyed the idea of having all the names right at the beginning, and I agree with your consensus of we should try it again sometime. Kyle, we just talked for about an hour or so of just the theory of your game.
Like I said, I worked on it for a long time, and
I know.
I almost wanted it to be like a board game. I wanted it to be very one night-esque, right?
And I think you did a great job getting that across. So I'm really only going to ask you one more question in regards to the actual game, I think, before we start to test, because we're going to run a tight ship. We're going to do all this. We're going to talk a little bit off the rails, and the next pod is just going to be straight into it. We're going day analysis and grades. Bori was never going to play, was she?
No.
Why did you do this?
Well, few reasons. One is because I wanted to tell a specific story, and that specific story only involved one person dying, and I thought it would be dramatic for narrative purposes. Doing a flip would provide the Mafia with a roll card for the town to know like what they could kind of like make up to try to fit in. We didn't talk about that actually. The rolls, I average word counted them, and they were about 95 words per roll, but they were much less for the town rolls than they were for the Mafia rolls. And so when they saw that flip, that would be their hint, like their rolls are shorter than yours. But if you weren't paying, like if you were as Mafia didn't have that thought, you have two rolls at your disposal. So it's like a 50-50. What's the length there about? And HeyTrainer actually posted a really long flavor text, right? And like I said, No one went over those, but they were all very short. In fact, the flavor text of the Steel Samurai was one sentence. So that was one thing that they could have been looking at.
Right.
I forgot how this conversation started already. What are we talking about?
I was asking about Bori.
Oh, Bori. Yeah. So that was one reason was to see a flip. And that was one reason was for the story. But I could have done that without actually having a player sign up for those two reasons.
Correct.
So why have a player sign up?
And we never actually saw Bori sign up. I think that's what led to some of the confusion.
Right. So
sorry, I'm putting sign up in quotes over here.
Yeah, I collaborated with Bori to make this as obvious as possible as I could without stating it that she was not intended to play. One, she didn't post in the thread that she had intended to play. Two, she was on the roster from the get-go. Like I posted the signups and she was already on it. Three is she didn't make it to the day phase, right? And it wasn't a coincidence, right, that she was the first to sign up and the first to go out. So there were clues there that she was never. And I immediately posted she is now a moderator, right? It wasn't like I waited. Right. So all of that was circumstantial evidence to the fact. So why have someone sign up? So it was for impact one, like only one player dies in this story. Someone actually died on night one. Two, I wanted people to be able to have more things to talk about because I took away the fact they couldn't talk about names, they couldn't talk about abilities. So I knew new players would struggle to have conversation now because they haven't played in a game like that, because we haven't had one in a while. So they could speculate, like, was there just a night zero kill? Was that planned? It was like a way to have some light conversation to start the game before they actually started getting the gears turning and thinking about the more complex things that were going on. This is also something for Mafia to talk about if they didn't know what to talk about, right? Because they might be in the same position. Yeah, exactly. You did it a lot. And in doing so, a town person could come to the conclusion, wait, where is this conversation getting us? It doesn't matter. So like this is the rationale of why I went through with it in the first place. Because I had a conversation with Bori, like, tell it to me straight. Do you think that if I let you sign up and you get killed night zero, will it be too big a distraction for the game to continue? Like, will I have Doom Town from the get-go? And she was like, I don't know, I'm kind of on the fence about it. But then my argument was, if Bori was killed night zero and she was intended to play, how does it change your town play knowing that? Can you think of a reason?
No.
Like, the Mafia got an extra kill, but they used it. What's the next conclusion? Like, oh, should we theorize whether they get 2 night kills this night now? No one's gonna think that. That's stupid.
Right? Yeah, you can't derive anything off a night.
You can't predict anything that will happen after a night 0 kill that is worth talking about, right?
Right.
Unless you want to say like, wow, everything, like we can't predict anything about this game. But even that's a nonsense conversation, right? Like, we should be prepared for anything. That's just filler. That's just words.
What if we draw a map?
I did like the map. I thought that was fun. I saved that picture.
That was fun.
Yeah, that was another thing that I need to think of something to talk about. Let's draw a map of the courtroom. But
right.
Yeah, there at some point I thought it was a reasonable conclusion that many players could come to, that having the conversation was not advancing the game state. So I
think most people did come to that conclusion.
Right.
But
I know some people were still salty about it after the fact, but
I'm not salty about it at all.
I don't think anyone was salty enough that they thought it ruined their experience or that it doomed the town.
No.
In fact, it was another way, an exercise in thinking about like, what is good town play? Is talking about this good town play? No, it's not.
All right. So outside of actual analysis of in-day phase or player-specific plays, is there any other comments you have based on the crafting of this, the theory of this, the playing out of this, just as a general umbrella statement you want to make, or do you feel you've got your points across?
The only thing, like obviously since the game was so lopsided, I've second guessed like, what if I had only allowed Mafia to have roles if they got unlocked when they possessed a role? In that case, Mafia would have only had 1 role usage over the 3 nights that happened in the game. What if there had only been 3 Mafia instead of 4? Some people speculated that there would only be 2 Mafia in the game.
That was weird to me.
What was the rationale behind that?
Not sure.
They thought the game was like so heavily favored for Mafia without knowing anything about Mafia's abilities or roles, or I mean, the only thing that they had to go off was if they really thought there was a night 0 kill, and we already discussed there's a lot of evidence pointing that there wasn't. So I don't know. Obviously, there's been people who think this is a Mafia favored game. That Mafia could Mafia
down favored.
Well, I was hoping you would argue that you'd play some devil's advocate with me and argue that it wasn't, but like,
I mean, I will get more into that next.
Okay.
On the day phase analysis, I have some things, but in terms of, I mean, if you looked at the role cards of Mafia, I had a passive ability. CRL had a passive ability. We had a role block and a little bit of target manipulation. In the grand scheme of things, we didn't have a second kill.
Yeah, we haven't talked. Are we going to talk about the Mafia abilities, or are we just going to?
You know what? I guess I think we can make time for them. I was gonna save them for after the sweep, but after we went through, but we could talk about now. Let's just go to that now
because we're talking about balance. So
we didn't have a guaranteed kill.
Yeah, so
we didn't have anything like that.
I think the second kill is
I'll talk about it. All right, so there's myself. I was
Bobby Fulbright.
Yep, Bobby Fulbright. Sorry, you went in and out there for a second. And in the event that a seer targeted me, I was perceived not guilty. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah,
just
it's a standard role.
Masking.
And the Miller, quote unquote, was the Steel Samurai role, right? Because he even I made him sound suspicious in the story. His role text didn't fit. He was just like, he's the protector of New Old Tokyo, right? He's a character in a cartoon show. Why is he here? So that was the Miller, right? So I had that traditional role without actually assigning you will be perceived as Mafia. And so the traditional role that went to you was you can be seen as town. Passive role, it's been included many a game. And I had already indicated by publicizing that the ability was there, that town had a seer and the seer could fail because there was a medium, that there was someone in the game who would look like they were town, even though they were Mafia. So that was another like really subtle clue I was giving by in the publishing of the abilities and the classes was there's someone in the game who can fool the seer, right? So I'm just telling you at the start of the game.
So yeah, that was the idea behind my role. Again, just a passive role. And speaking of passive roles, here's another passive role. CRL88T, who was Shelly D. Killer impersonating Leighton. Gentleman Assassin. In the event you are convicted by a vote of your peers during the day phase, you will immediately assassinate the player that voted earliest against you during that day phase, whether or not they are still voting for you in the final tally. So this actually took away the ability for us to bust CRL early. We had to hop on after the fact.
Wouldn't that have been funny if CRL got day one town voted off and one of you had been the first to vote?
That would have been awful.
I was kind of rooting for it, but
I've even said to you after the fact that I wanted to make a play of like, I'll vote for her like at the start of a day phase. But what would happen if she would have died?
Right.
For real.
Right.
I would have been screwed. But if it didn't happen, think of all the town credit I would have had.
Exactly.
See, so
that was a cool play that even I hadn't thought of in conceiving of the role. Yeah.
Our alpha was
Wait,
Dick
before you go on, yeah. So I think that we've been making Mafia too powerful in many games.
Okay.
Which is funny because people think this Mafia is too powerful, even though I've outlined the many ways that you could have made a super powerful town person.
Right.
So I think the bonus kill thing is way too powerful.
Strong.
But you do want there to be like a comeback ability, right? Now, in past games, not recently, but in past games, there were like roles where if you killed that person during the day, then the last person to vote for them would also be removed from the game.
Takedown.
Yeah, and that's kind of a feels bad. And so I decided to combine the two. So one, I was like, I'll give them an extra kill, but they could miss out on it because that could be the last Mafia member standing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's not even to say like it could be role blocked by a sleuth. But in addition, I also nerfed it because Professor Layton could not perform the night kill until they were the last Mafia member standing. So
right, so they could never be detectived.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was because it would have been way too easy for you guys to be like, well, always send Professor Layton, because if we send Professor Layton and they get killed, then we get an extra kill anyway, right? So I had to disincentivize that. And then I chose the first vote. Both it kind of was a way to like also make it good. Because if you kill the last person to vote, it's usually like someone like who's been waiting around and they're like, well, I don't want it to be a no kill scenario, so I'm gonna be the last vote. And you might not get a good player in that case. But this was a way for Mafia to get someone who had a good hunch, right? They were the first, like if you are the first person to vote for someone, like you're usually the impetus. So
right,
someone had good instincts. That person likely would have been proven town, because they were the one who initially wanted to go after them, unless they were hard bussing CRL for some reason. Then the Mafia could like bounce back by killing that person. And so now someone that you like clearly felt good about during that flip, they've been swept out from under you.
Yeah, no, I think this was just in terms of if you put all of the Mafia abilities in a bucket, I think this is the best one. Dick Gumshoe, the alpha. Years of loyal follow. I don't know why I was about to read his flavor text. Who cares? Abduction. During the night phase, you may order the abduction of a player. Standard night kill. And then we have perjury. During the night phase, you may target one player. That player will be perceived to have targeted the player that is abducted this phase.
Yeah, so I think we've been making the head Mafia too powerful in general.
Uh-huh.
Like I said, the extra kill not necessary. That needs to be nerfed if it's going to stay like the way I did it, personally speaking. Another thing I loathe, I don't like the neighbors, as I've already talked about. I loathe the invincible kill. Like we talked about earlier, the Protector is already never, ever pulling it off. They've done it once in like a decade that we've been playing online Mafia, or I've been.
Why do you want to take that one away from them? Yeah.
Why are we trying to take that one away from them? We don't need to nerf the Protector role.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
So invincible kills are dumb.
Yeah.
And then this was mostly like all the 4 roles that were in place were meant to be a counter to the town roles in some way, like one counter for each town power role. So this was the counter to that detective.
Okay. Yeah. Lastly, we had Morgan Fay, who was possessing the bottom of Rafa. Psychic Kinesis. During the night phase, you may ability block one player. Your target, if they attempted to use abilities, will be informed they were ability blocked. You may not target a player if they received an ability from a guilty player during the previous day phase. And during the night phase, you may target 2 players instead of 1. Now, you may not target a player if they received an ability from a guilty player. That's, I think, pretty standard. So Mafia can't pass something and then choose what they block.
Yeah.
But why 2 on night 1?
So because the roles could move around, I thought that role blocking would be much weaker. Because
ironic that it probably won us the game.
Yeah. I wanted them to get a hit on night 1.
You wanted a night hit.
Yeah, okay. I wanted them to have a night 1 hit. And this was further incentive for that conversation that never was had about not pigeonholing who we give the town roles to. Because if I've already suggested who would be best for them, isn't that also suggesting to a role blocker who it's best to role block? Right? So this was like a way for them to like get one off. I thought, like, because of the way that the town could make really strong end games, as long as they got to an end game, that the Mafia would need some way to stay in the beginning of the game. And that was by getting off a roadblock.
Yeah. Actually, going back to getting off roadblocks, I think it was night 1 and night 3 that we did. And there wasn't any on night 2. I will guiltily go ahead and divulge talking to myself a little bit here. I brought up multiple times the fact that no one else was role blocked on night 2. And looking back on that, that's really suspicious because there's only 4 roles in the game. The chances of the roadblock not going through are actually more likely than it going through. So why was I so hung up on trying to use that as a discredit to Master Mukau's claim that he had been roadblocked? Does that make sense?
So many weird conversations about that happened during the game. Like, Master Mukau in general kind of was his own like worst advocate. He did all the Mafia's work for him and coming up with ways for himself to look Mafia. Right? So he'd be like, wow, it is weird that I've been roadblocked twice. It's almost like I can't use abilities.
I know, that's so strange.
Yeah, which is like observant, but it's really making you look anti-town, and when you're town, it's not what you want to do.
Especially when there's only like the town only knows of literally 4 abilities. So that means at most 4 town members have an ability, which means more likely than not a roadblock's gonna miss.
Yeah.
But then the roadblock hit on him not back-to-back nights, but it only hit on him during the course of the game.
Yeah, so it really challenged town to think, do we think there is a roadblock in the game, or do we think that Master Mukau knows there isn't and is therefore claiming there is one in order to give himself town cred, which is kind of a convoluted way of thinking. Like, Mafia wouldn't role block themselves, and if they did role block somebody, why would Master Mukau be claiming it? Like, is he waiting until they know that the other person didn't have an ability, or what's going on here?
Yeah, we'll get more into that later. But yeah, there's all sorts of goodies to unpack in the 4-day phases, but there's a lot in them, and we'll get to them on the next podcast because we're gonna keep this one tight. So next podcast, we got all sorts of stuff. We've already talked about Bori, but I've got thoughts on AWAST. I'm sure you do too. I have mainly on his day one. What if we just kill the main guy?
Yeah.
We're gonna talk about that. I like strategy. That. TFS, is he unfairly becoming the scapegoat?
Man, you need to move to a different time zone.
I know. Jelly.
I'm kidding.
He got the Absol Trainer Bori day 2 treatment where it looked like just because he was trying, he got killed.
Oh, yeah. Lots of conversation to be had with that.
Uh-huh. I have another thing I have here. And this is almost scummy worthy. Is Rax the best sub on the website? I think they might be.
I didn't know that this is like a sixth man argument, right?
Oh yeah, is Rax better off the bench?
I didn't even know that this was like a part of a Mafia game to consider, but someone's fresh off the bench.
Yeah, well they were really good in my game prior.
Yeah.
Although Raptor Zone is pointing to himself, seeming to indicate that he believes he's the best sub, but I don't ever remember him subbing in.
New Scummy
I came into the Ducklet game, subbed in for Jared 1990,
okay.
Ended up with an A. Just want to throw that out.
Okay. All right, great. Thanks for that. Oh, and many more. Is Wendy Oldbag really that old?
How old is she? Do you know?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. I thought you were going somewhere.
No, I don't. So we still have lots to unpack. And then grades. Does Kyle give anybody better than a D? I have that written down. So school's back in session for you. That's why we got to cut this short.
Oh yeah.
You're a little sleepy, aren't you?
I am not. I'm not getting any sleep.
You got a moment of zen for us for going back to school?
And well, yeah, kind of. I have. It's related, but it's not from my own life experience.
Okay.
So I have two, and they're not related at all. So
okay, Alex, you can come in here if you want to.
Now come on in. The water's fine. Oh, I was going to say that. Okay. So
I was just thinking about me and Rax being the Jamal Crawford and Lou Williams of HeyTrainer Mafia.
So this one's for Alex. I've been doing a lot of max raids on Sword and Shield to get some precious armorite ore so I can move tutor. And so I've been like doing a couple a day in between my ranked battles. And I did a Pikachu one. There was like a Pikachu and Raichu event this weekend, and I only did one Pikachu one. You can tell me if you know, were they always were they guaranteed shiny? Because I found a shiny one. So I was doing this max raid battle against shiny Pikachu, and I knocked it out, obviously, and then I went to do the catch, and I was like, got a style on it, gonna use that Premier Ball like I like to use, and I got fancy and it broke out the Premier Ball. So I'd missed my first shiny in Sword and Shield.
You always throw Repeat Ball or what's the other one that's good for raids? I think Dusk maybe. But Repeat Ball is the best raid ball. No.
But people always have things in Moon Balls and whatever, the Fast Ball, and I was like, I want a cool Pokeball from a shiny, and it was a Pikachu. Come on, I've caught max raids things in Pokeballs before, so I thought it would work. But I redeemed myself today because I opened Pokemon Go at the school, and the only Pokemon I clicked on was a Poochyena, and it was shiny.
Oh, I like shiny Poochyena. I like the gold ones.
Yeah, that's what I got. But that's not my moment of zen. I was just
just looked it up. Here's my note. Pikachu shiny rate was boosted in Sword and Shield.
Oh, okay. But it wasn't guaranteed?
No, it wasn't guaranteed. It was just a boosted rate.
Welp. Okay, so my moment of Zen today is actually a game you guys get to play. So the name of the game is Who's Not That Hick? Because one of them is me, right? So the Big Ten not having school or not having football this year, people are upset about it. So I pulled 3 comments from an article about them not having the football season today, and I made up one. And I want you guys to tell me which one you think is the one I made up. I'm going to read them in character, all right?
Oh, no.
Are you ready? You might want to take notes. They're like a couple sentences each. You might want to jot down like what the reason why you think this one is fake, okay? All right. Okay, so here's number 1. The Big Ten elitist snobbery made the financial decision to end the season. The greed of the colleges that take from the sport. And then when there is need to invest in our sports, they say, F you.
I'm assuming that instead of the F, it's the actual word.
No, it just says, like, it says foo, like lowercase.
This is important.
F-U.
This is important for whether or not I believe it's real.
I'm going to analyze this one by one. The use of the word snobbery. Wow. I don't know about that.
Yeah. Okay. That's a Kyle word.
I will note that take doesn't have hyphens in between.
Interesting. What, is it supposed to?
Is this all lowercase?
Maybe that's me werewolfing you. All right, so that's
Are these
number
all
1.
you?
No. That's the long con. Okay, next one. It's not like they were going to compete for a national championship anyways. Go ahead, join those leftists. SEC is the only league that matters anyways.
Okay.
There was no specific team here. It was just the whole Big Ten was not going to compete.
Right.
And this is on an article of the Big Ten not playing football, right?
Yes.
No, it's not team specific?
Not team specific.
Okay, I'm ready. Continue.
All right, so that was number 2. Here's number 3.
Okay.
You leaders of the Little Ten, think about how many people you just unemployed with your sissy decision. Y'all can't beat ACC or SEC teams anyway. Who needs y'all?
Y'all. All right.
You ready?
This is hard.
You ready, Al?
Uh-huh.
Okay, last one.
Yeah, I have my pick. Oh, there's one more.
There's one more. All right. And what if the players decide to suit up on game day anyway? How would you stop them? By tackling them? I say they show America what real protest looks like with some football.
No.
I think my is that it? Is that all?
Do you want me to repeat one or
no? I have my guess.
Okay.
I have a guess too.
All right. So
I'm gonna stick with my gut and go the first one with the snobbery and the take.
And the FU and foo.
Yeah.
All right, Graham, what do you think?
I believe it's the second one.
Second one, that was
not like they're gonna compete anyways.
Join the other leftists. Yeah. Okay. No, you're both wrong.
Oh no.
Mine was the last one.
Oh no.
We're gonna protest them with some football.
I did think about the last one because of the tackling thing. I want to be like, wouldn't someone in those comments be like, not like they teach those boys how to tackle anymore?
Yeah. I thought I would give it away because I said, we'll show them, or I said, I say they show America. I thought the America would give it away.
No, it doesn't.
Oh, God.
I'd fit right in.
You should start posting like that on those threads.
All right.
You'd make a really good parody like Twitter account.
Who
for
was
stuff like that.
it was the troll on South Park? It was Kyle's dad, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it was Kyle's dad, yeah.
It was Kyle all along. All right, Graham, what's your moment of Zen?
So, my oldest just started kindergarten on Thursday. 2 days before, Tuesday, his brother and him are outside. Is that the proper grammar, Kyle? His brother and him are outside? He's outside with his brother? Is that better?
His brother and he were outside.
That sounds weird.
His brother and he.
His brother and he. Sure. English is weird. Well, I'll just talk like the guys in the last little bit you did. Anyway, they're outside and they're with their mom.
Well, it's not the word is the problem. It's his brother and he were outside. You split it up. His brother was outside. He was outside. So both work. His brother and he was outside.
His brother and he was. Okay, I get. So it's like a name and an I kind of thing where you have to be able to say the I without
you could just
the name
not be weird and say they were outside.
True. They were outside. And
wait, who was outside?
Hunter and Bennett.
I'm joking.
I know. Who's on first? They're helping their mom like do a little digging for like a little garden. And so they've got these little they're kids' shovels. But they're metal. I mean, they're very small. I'm holding up my hand right now and it's like the spade. Spade? Is that what's at the end of a shovel? Is it a spade? Is that what it's called? The shovel of the shovel?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's like the size of like a human hand. It's not very big. It's not like it's a full blown thing, and it's it's cheaper metal. Well, anyway, so they're out there and they're playing around, and again, 2 days before we send our 5-year-old to his very first schooling, they're out there playing around. Bennett spins around and just clocks Hunter right in the head with it, like right here, right in the middle of his forehead, and just boom, insta gash opens right up, and he's profusely bleeding.
Hunter
I hear him
had a lot of
scream.
Head injuries.
I know, it's scary. But hey, every time we take him to the doctor, they say no scans needed. But anyway, so I hear him screaming. I'm inside. I was taking care of something in here, and he's walking towards the door, and he's screaming pretty loud. And I look, I haven't made eye contact with him. I look at his face, and it's just like one side's just, it's just got blood just coming down his cheek. I'm like, okay, great. So I take him and push him into my shirt, and I'm walking inside and tell him he's going to be okay and whatnot. So he's fine. First off, just want to throw that out there before we go any farther. But he had to get we cleaned it up, and he had this big, nice wound, just nice and open. It was pretty deep, kind of gross to look at. Cleaned it out, put some gauze on it, a little Band-Aid, like taped it down, and finally made the decision of like, we should probably take him to see if he needs stitches. So we take him to the ER, of course, when we get there, and only one of us can go in because COVID. And he didn't need stitches, but he got like this nice surgical glue that, they dab it on, squish down the wound and glue it together. And so now all of our pictures of him going off to his first day of kindergarten, he has this huge bandage right across his forehead because his little brother hit him with a shovel. So there you go.
That could be his thing now.
I didn't even notice in the photos that you posted.
He's got a good old Band-Aid right there across the top of his head.
Yeah, he does. It kind of blended in.
Intentional.
This reminds me, I'll just use this in place of my moment of Zen. When I was kids with my sister.
When you were kids with your sister?
When I was a kid and my sister was a kid. When we were kids. I had a shuffle incident with her. We were outside shoveling snow, and I was just shoveling without looking, and I didn't realize she was behind me. And I gashed her ear with the edge of the snow shovel, and like blood just started pouring out of her ear.
No.
She was fine. It was
Did she have to get the stitches?
No, she didn't.
Oh,
stitches. And she hears just fine out of it. So
I had two similar instances with my sister. I accidentally.
Oh no!
We were playing Power Rangers once, and I like half swung a bat, and I didn't know she was behind me. It was a metal bat, and hit her in the forehead. She got stitches. And another time we were fishing, and I cast, and the hook went into her cheek.
Oh!
I know. I'm always every single cast, I am painfully now aware of where my line is at all times.
Did you like pull it too? Or
Yeah,
did you realize
I
it
did.
right away? Oh no!
Yeah.
Ooh.
God.
I had my I was still little enough. Me and my brother, little enough to where we would still take baths together. We were at one of my grandparents' house, and we were getting out, and my little brother was like tickling me when we were sitting like drying up, and I was
Graham
like,
and he was
squirming.
tickling you.
Shut up. And I'm squirming. I'm like swinging my head around, and boom, hit it right into an old porcelain toilet. And I mean, I don't know if obviously podcast listeners can't see, but I have, from where the stitches were, I had a gash and it like opened up like this big, like when it happened right here on the side of my face when I was like 6. And I had to go to the ER and get stitches to close it down.
God.
So yeah, my brother hit me threw my head into a toilet.
Siblings, man.
I know, they're the worst.
I will admit that I've been werewolfing you guys. I realize I don't want to werewolf our listeners. It's his brother and he were, not his brother and he was. So it's not him, it's he. It is were, not was.
What a long con.
I know.
That was a super long con.
It was a grammar con.
Somebody shut the podcast off after they heard that, and now they're gonna speak incorrectly for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
All right. Do you have anything else you want to share?
I'm good.
Should we wrap this bad boy up?
We got a part 2.
Okay. We do have a part 2 coming. Like we said, we will go through the day phases of this game and a little bit of grade talk. And yeah, that's about it. So thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. For Kyle and Alex, I'm Graham. We'll see you next week.
Love ya.